Okay, so we'll start with the meditation on the breath, and we'll go straight into the breath, and then we'll do the posture as part of the meditation on the breath, just for a change. So obviously do set yourself in your posture, but meanwhile start focusing on your breath. We tend to say out the nostrils, but I have found that the throat or the chest work quite well as well, so up to you. And then as you breathe, begin to just improve your posture a little bit, especially straightening your spine. So on the one hand, you're focusing on the object, which is the breath. And then sort of in the background, you're just noticing what's going on in your body. And that also involves becoming aware of any tension and releasing it. And you can release the tension with the out-breath. And with the in-breath, you can make your mind more alert, more sort of bright and focused. So this is quite a quick way of confirming the posture at the beginning of a meditation. And once you feel reasonably satisfied with your posture, you can just let it be and focus on the object, the breath. And don't forget to gently but firmly bring your attention back to the breath every time you notice any other thought arises in your mind. Be quite alert to that when it happens. And then once you feel able to really hold your attention to the breath, notice the rhythm of the breath. Once you become very clear regarding the rhythm, notice the two turning points or still points in each cycle of breath. Don't worry if this slows down your breath a little, just follow it naturally. Now the breath is an example of the wind element because there's movement involved. And the wind element has different degrees of subtlety or grossness, like a spectrum. So first of all, observe how in the middle part between the two turning points or still points, the wind element is more gross. And then you can see what actually happens at the two turning points. There's a similarity between what happens at the internal turning point and what happens at the external turning point. In both cases, there's a dissipation or dissolution of the energy of the wind element. And in the process, the wind element becomes more subtle. In particular, try to be aware of what happens at the end point of this process of becoming more subtle before it reverses. So there's a kind of tapering off at each end in terms of the gross or subtlety of the energy. And now become aware of the mind or consciousness that is doing the meditation. In particular, be aware of what happens to the mind through this whole cycle. So what can happen is that in the middle part, when the wind energy is more gross, the mind feels as if it's actually witnessing something separate and more clear, in the sense of more definite. But as the breath dissipates and dissolves at each end point, the mind becomes increasingly subtle along with the breath. And there can be an experience at each end point that the mind and the energy of the breath sort of merge into a disappearance. Before returning for the next part of the cycle. Remember, you're not trying to make something happen. You're simply being aware of what is actually happening to both the breath and the mind. So perhaps what you're experiencing now is that the mind and the breath are becoming more gross or more subtle alongside each other at the same time in a sort of parallel process. And this is because the mind and its object are interdependent. What does this interdependence mean? It means that without the mind, there is no object. And without the object, there is no mind. So finally, just rest in that experience of no separate object, no separate mind. Okay, short pause to stretch, change position. So today is going to be the final session of this series that we started at the beginning of the year on the 6 elements. And we're going to do a meditation called Unpacking the Box. And it's quite handy that everybody here has already done quite a lot of the meditations on the 6 elements, because we're not going to spend too long, well, we won't have enough time to really ascertain each of them from the outset, but you're already familiar with them, most of you. I think you've all done at least some of each element. Okay, so bring your body back to a meditation posture and imagine that you are seated inside a cube. So the floor can be where the base of the cube is. And the size of the cube shouldn't be too much bigger than your height. So the roof of the cube is a little bit above your head. And then you can work out where the sides are based on that. You're in the center. And the cube is made of light. So things can pass through it easily, but you can sort of You can imagine the sides being there. You could imagine that you could see them. You can make them colored if you want, but we won't go into the colors too much. We'll keep it quite simple. They could be made of white light. That would work quite well. But you can see through from one side to the other. So establish that. And then we start by ascertaining the earth element of our body, which, remember, is everything hard. So in particular, the bones and the skull, but also the nails, teeth, and hair. And if you were to take out all the moisture, you would also find that things like the skin and even the organs and flesh would actually become dry and hard. So you can also add those things, but mainly it's the bone structure. And just absorb your mind with the experience of the hardness of these things I've mentioned. So you feel no separation from the earth element. Now we're going to remove everything which is the earth element from the box, and we're going to place it all in a pile behind us, which is the other side of the rear face of the box. So it's like all your bones, and you can plonk your skull on top, and you can have your hair and teeth and nails, everything hard makes a pile behind you outside the box. And you can sort of imagine it quite clearly. And then when you bring your attention back inside the box, the predominant element now is the water element, because the earth element's gone. And you can merge your awareness now with the wateriness, the liquid feeling, the softness and the texture of the water elements of your body. And just let your mind absorb with that. So you feel you are the water element for a while. So that's quite a powerful, different experience. And now imagine that to your left, just outside the box, there is a very large bowl. And then bring a kind of rubber or plastic tube which can bend, and take it from the top of your head into the bowl, and allow all the liquids of your body to siphon through this tube into the bowl. And don't worry about them getting mixed up. They've still got their individual molecular structures, but it's like your body completely drains and all the liquids go into this bowl on the left, outside the box. And so when you feel completely dry and empty of liquid, you can sort of let go of the imagination of the tube, but you can leave the bowl there. So now behind you, outside the box, there's still the pile of the earth element, all the bones and skull and so forth. And to the left, there's this bowl with all the water elements of your body. And when you bring your attention back inside the box this time, the predominant element is the fire element. it's, again, completely different from the first two. So just experience the heat that exists in your body, which is the fire element. It's in all parts of your body, but in some parts perhaps more strongly than others. That's fine. And again, just absorb your mind with the experience of being the heat. And the heat, being the fire element, actually manifests now as flames. And the flames jump through the face of the box on your right. And they just sort of stay there, dancing in space. So there's just flames dancing around, which is your heat or fire element. So now, outside the box behind you is the pile of bones, the earth element. To your left, there is the imagined bowl containing your water element. And to your right, there is the dancing flames, which is your fire element. And now, when you bring your attention back inside the box, the dominant element is the wind or air element. Now remember, this is simply the energy of motion or movement. And it has the gross aspects, such as the breath that we meditated on earlier, or the movement of the limbs is also a gross aspect. But it also has subtle aspects like the nervous system. Or the movement of thought even is also connected with the wind element. So just tune in and absorb your consciousness with the wind element. It's a little bit like an electrical field. And now imagine that in front of the box, the other side of the front face, there's a rubber balloon. And all the wind elements of your body blows into the balloon. And it expands and blows, it becomes bigger. And when all the wind energy or element of your body has gone into the balloon, you imagine tying a knot in the entranceway so that it can't escape. And now, just to go around again, behind you is the pile of bones, the earth element. To your left is the bowl containing the water element. To your right, the dancing flames of the fire element. And in front of you now, a balloon containing your wind element. And now when you bring your attention back inside the box, the dominant element is the space element. Now obviously the space element doesn't know boundaries, but we are talking about our body, so we're talking about the space that our body occupies, particularly. So just absorb your mind with the experience of the space element of your body. And the space element sort of naturally rises or gravitates towards the sky, which is above the ceiling or top face of the box. And it gradually lifts up and goes through that ceiling until it comes to rest just above the box. So now you have the bones of the earth element behind, the liquids of the water element in the bowl on the left, the dancing flames of the fire element on the right, the energy of the wind element in the balloon in front, and the space of the body in the area above the box. And when you bring your consciousness back inside the box this time, the only element remaining is the consciousness element. And so just rest in the clear awareness of the consciousness element. Of course, it's capable of thoughts and feelings and so forth, but really just stay in the clear essence of consciousness. It's awareness. And this is also going to leave the box. It's going to descend through the floor, as if it's got a bit of weight somehow. But anyway, it hasn't got weight, but it just descends until it comes to rest beneath. And so now, behind is the pile of bones and so forth, the earth element. To the left is the bowl containing the water element. To the right, the dancing flames of the fire element. In front, the balloon containing the wind element. Above is the space element. And below is the consciousness element. And from outside the box, you become aware that nothing remains within the box. And just, again, absorb your meditation with this recognition that nothing now remains within the box. And now we're going to go into reverse, and the consciousness element comes up through the floor and returns into the box. The space element comes down from above and takes up its position, the space of your body. The knot of the balloon is untied, and the wind element comes back into that space, and the balloon disappears. The dancing flames jump back inside, and the heat of the fire element is spread effectively through the space of the body. You bring back the tube and siphon the liquids back from the bowl, back through your head, and sort of spontaneously they go to their correct locations. And then once you're sort of refilled with all your liquids, the tube and the bowl disappear. And then similarly, the earth element, all the bones and all those different things in the pile, all kind of come back and go to their absolute correct places. Like, so your whole skeleton and so forth is reassembled. And finally, the box just disappears. And here you are, reassembled, still meditating. And there's an interesting question which I'll leave you with before we finish. Does this feel to be the same person who started the meditation?